Morgan cut the power to her ship's main engines and let the Wayfinder drift into the debris field. Her scanner showed twisted metal everywhere, spinning slowly in the dark. This had been a transport ship once, maybe 2 days ago. Now it was just pieces scattered across space like broken toys. She tapped the console and brought up the salvage map. Red dots marked valuable components. Blue dots showed dangerous fuel leaks. Yellow dots were just junk. Needed the red dots. Her fuel cells were running low and the nearest station was 3 days away. She could not afford to leave empty-handed. The debris field floated in neutral space, right between two war zones. The factions had been fighting for 6 months now. Nobody knew what started it anymore. Both sides just kept shooting, and civilian ships got caught in the middle. Had seen 5 wrecks like this in the past month alone. She suited up and checked her tools. Welding torch, cutting laser, magnetic grapples. Everything worked. Sealed her helmet and stepped into the airlock. The pump sucked the air out with a hiss. Then the outer door opened and she pushed herself into the black. The wreckage turned slowly around her, fired her suit jets and moved toward the largest chunk of hull. Her boots locked onto the metal with a clang. She walked across the surface, scanning for the power core. If she could get that intact, she would have enough credits to eat for a month. Found the core housing twisted but sealed. Good. She started cutting through the support beams. The laser made bright sparks in the darkness. The metal fell away in glowing pieces. She worked fast. Debris fields like this did not stay stable for long. Pieces crashed into each other. Things exploded. Smart salvagers got in and got out. That was when she heard it. Stopped cutting and turned up her suit audio. Space was silent, but her sensors picked up vibrations through the metal. She pressed her glove against the hull and felt it. A rhythmic thumping. Something was moving inside the wreckage. Her first thought was a damaged reactor. Her second thought was to run, but the pattern was wrong. It was not mechanical. It was too irregular, too organic. Moved along the hull, following the vibrations. They led her to a collapsed section near what had been the cargo bay. She found a gap in the twisted metal and shined her light inside. 2 eyes reflected back at her, then 4 more, then 6. Froze, the eyes blinked, something whimpered. She adjusted her light and saw them clearly. 3 small figures huddled in the corner of the broken cargo bay. They had fur, large pointed ears, and long tails wrapped around their bodies. Cubs. Children. They could not have been more than 5 or 6 years old in human terms. The cubs pressed against each other, terrified. One of them, the smallest, had blood matted in its fur. Another had a broken translator device hanging from its neck. The third, slightly larger than the others, tried to shield the younger 2 with its body. His breath caught in her throat. She had seen plenty of wrecks before. She had seen bodies floating in space. But she had never found survivors, especially not children. She raised her hand slowly and waved. The cubs flinched. The largest one hissed, showing small fangs, stayed still. She tapped her chest and then pointed at them. She made a circle with her arms, trying to show safety. The cubs did not move. They just stared at her with those wide, frightened eyes. Checked her suit scanner. Life support in the cargo bay was failing. The temperature was dropping fast, maybe 2 hours before it hit freezing. The cubs wore thin clothing, probably sleepwear. They would not survive the cold. She looked back at her ship. The Wayfinder was a salvage vessel built for 1 person and cargo. There were no passenger seats, no extra life support. She could not just fly them out of here. Even if she could, the debris field was too unstable. Flying through it with passengers would be suicide. Turned back to the cubs. The smallest one was shaking, not from fear, from cold. She made her decision in that moment. Morgan had grown up on a colony world where people helped each other or they died. Her mother had always said that some things mattered more than credits or fuel or even your own safety. Taking care of kids was one of those things. Pointed at the cubs and then at the floor. She made a staying motion with her hand. Then she pointed at herself and made a building motion. The cubs watched her, confused. The largest one tilted its head, pushed herself back out of the wreckage and returned to her ship. She started gathering materials, hull plates from her cargo bay, support beams she had salvaged last week, a portable power cell, welding equipment, medical supplies, food rations. She made 3 trips, dragging everything to the cargo bay where the cubs hid. They watched her work with growing curiosity, started welding the hull plates together, creating walls. She reinforced them with the support beams. She built a frame, then a roof. The work took hours. Arms ached. Her suit's oxygen meter dropped into the yellow zone, but she kept going. She sealed every gap. She connected the power cell to a heating unit. She tested the atmosphere inside. The shelter was crude. It looked like a metal box cobbled together from junk, but it was solid. It would keep the cubs warm, it would keep them alive. Finished the last weld and tested the door seal. It held. She turned to the cubs and gestured for them to come inside. They hesitated. The largest one sniffed the air. Then slowly, carefully, it stepped toward the shelter. The other 2 followed. Helped them inside. The space was small but warm. She activated the heating unit and the temperature started to rise. The cubs huddled together on the floor. She opened her medical kit and pointed at the injured one. It flinched but let her approach. Cleaned the wound as gently as she could. The cub whimpered but stayed still. She wrapped it in bandages. Then she opened a food ration and broke it into pieces. She offered it to the cubs. They sniffed it suspiciously. The smallest one took a tiny bite, then another. Soon all 3 were eating. Sat back and watched them. They were children. Just children caught in a war they did not start on a ship that got blown apart. They should have been home with their families. They should have been safe. She looked at the makeshift shelter she had built from scrap metal. It was not much, but it was something. It was a cradle in the darkness, a safe place in the void. The cubs finished eating and curled up together. The smallest one looked at with those big eyes. It made a soft sound, almost like a purr, smiled behind her helmet. She would figure out the rest tomorrow. For now the cubs were warm and fed. They were alive. That was enough. Sealed the shelter door and returned to her ship. She set up her equipment to monitor the structure. Then she sent out a distress signal, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. Someone would come. Someone had to come. But as she sat in her cockpit watching the stars, had a bad feeling. This was a war zone. Neutral space meant nobody claimed it, but it also meant nobody protected it. Help might not arrive in time. Or worse, the wrong kind of help might arrive first. She looked at the shelter on her scanner. 3 small life signs glowed inside, safe for now. Made another decision. If help did not come, she would find a way to get these cubs out herself. Even if it meant tearing her ship apart for parts. Even if it meant walking through hell. Some things mattered more than credits or fuel or safety. Her mother had taught her that, and Morgan never forgot her lessons, did not sleep that night. She spent the hours reinforcing the shelter, adding extra plating to the walls. Every time a piece of debris drifted too close, she went out and pushed it away. The cubs needed to stay safe. That was all that mattered. Dawn did not exist in space, but's body knew when morning came. Her muscles ached from the work. Her oxygen reserves were running low. She had used too much moving back and forth. But the shelter stood strong, and the life signs inside remained steady. She approached the shelter door and knocked gently on the metal. A few seconds passed. Then the door opened a crack. One large eye peered out at her. It was the biggest cub, the one who had tried to protect the others. Waved, the eye blinked. Then the door opened wider. All 3 cubs sat inside, watching her. They looked better than yesterday. The injured one's bandage was clean. They all seemed warmer, more alert. Held up another food ration. The cubs perked up immediately. She smiled and stepped inside. The shelter felt cozy now, almost like a real room. The cubs had arranged some loose fabric into a nest in the corner. They had even tried to clean up, pushing debris to one side. She sat down and opened the ration pack. The cubs moved closer, their fear fatting, broke the food into pieces and handed them out. The smallest cub took its piece and then did something that surprised her. It touched its glove with its small paw and made a trilling sound. The largest cub spoke. The words came out in the language, all clicks and soft growls. Its translator could not help because hers was built for standard galactic trade language, but she understood the tone. It was a question. Pointed at herself, she said slowly. Then she pointed at each cub and raised her eyebrows. The largest cub understood. It placed a paw on its chest. It said, then it pointed at the middle cub, finally at the smallest. Repeated the names. The cubs made happy sounds, climbed into his lap purring, felt her heart squeeze. This little one trusted her completely. She spent the next hour trying to communicate, used hand gestures and drawings in the dust on the floor. She learned that they had been on an evacuation ship. Their colony was caught between the two factions. The ship was supposed to take them somewhere safe. Then the missiles hit. Drew a picture of a family, 2 adults, 3 cubs, understood. She pointed at the drawing and then around the shelter, asking where they were. Ears drooped. The cub shook its head. Gone, maybe dead, maybe on another ship. They did not know. Felt anger burn in her chest. This war had taken everything from these children. Their home, their family, their safety. And for what? Territory, resources, pride. None of it mattered compared to the 3 lives sitting in front of her. She made a promise to herself. These cubs would not become another casualty. She would keep them alive. She would find their families or find them a new home, whatever it took. Spent the rest of the day improving the shelter. She scavenged a water recycler from the wreckage. She found intact emergency blankets and made them into proper bedding. She even found a damaged data pad and managed to fix it. The cubs could use it to draw and play simple games. Helped her work. The middle cub was curious about everything. It watched weld and cut metal. It handed her tools when she needed them, taught it how to check the seals on the door, learned fast. Was more protective. The oldest cub stayed close to, always watching, always careful, but saw it relax as the hours passed. When finished installing a better air filter, touched her arm and made a grateful sound. Was just a baby, really. The smallest cub played with bits of wire, making them into shapes. It sang little songs in the language. Sometimes it fell asleep in the middle of playing, exhausted. Would pick it up gently and put it in the nest of blankets. That evening shared her last good meal with them. Real protein bars, not the cheap ration paste. The cubs ate slowly, savoring every bite. Afterward crawled into his lap again, leaned against her side, even sat close, its tail wrapped around its feet. Told them stories about Earth. She did not know if they understood the words, but they listened to her voice. She talked about oceans and forests, about cities with millions of people, about her childhood on a mining colony where the ground shook when the drills ran. She told them about her mother, who had raised alone after her father died in a cave-in. Her mother had been tough and kind at the same time. She had taught how to fix anything with the right tools and enough patience. She had also taught that protecting people, especially children, was the most important job anyone could have. The cubs fell asleep one by one, first purring softly. Then its small body relaxed against side. Finally, though the oldest cub fought sleep until the end, trying to stay alert. Carefully moved them to the nest of blankets. She tucked them in, making sure they were warm. Then she sat by the door and watched them sleep. Her emergency beacon was still broadcasting. 2 days now and no response. That worried her. She checked her ship's sensors. The debris field was getting worse. 2 large pieces had collided an hour ago, creating more fragments. The shelter was in a relatively safe pocket, but that could change fast. Was reviewing her options when her ship's computer beeped. A contact. A ship had entered the debris field. Finally, help was here. She opened the communication channel. "This is Morgan of the salvage vessel Wayfinder. I have 3 civilian survivors in need of immediate rescue. Children. They need medical attention and transport to a safe station." Static crackled. Then a voice replied in heavily accented galactic trade language. "This is Officer of the Protection Force. We have received your beacon. Stand by for boarding." Felt relief flood through her. The military. They would know how to contact the Cubs' families. They would have proper medical facilities. Everything would be okay. She went to the shelter and gently woke the Cubs. "Help is here," she said, gesturing to the sky. "Your people are here." But the Cubs did not look happy. Its ears went flat against its head, backed away from the door, whimpered and clung to suit. Frowned. "What's wrong?" Pointed at the ship on scanner display. The cub made a violent gesture, then pointed at itself and the others. Translator caught one word: danger. Before could ask more, her radio crackled again. "Human salvager, this is Officer. Bring the Cubs to your ship. We will retrieve them there." Something in the officer's tone made instinct scream. It was not concern. It was not relief. It was cold, mechanical, like the Cubs were cargo, not children. "Officer, these children are injured and scared. They need gentle handling. I can bring them out when you have a proper medical team ready." "Negative, bring them out now. That is an order." His jaw tightened. "I'm a civilian in neutral space. You can't give me orders." The line went silent for a moment, then spoke again, and this time the tone was harder. "Those Cubs are nationals. They fall under military jurisdiction. You will turn them over immediately, or you will be charged with kidnapping and interference in military operations." Looked at the 3 Cubs. Stood in front of the younger 2, protective stance, ears back. They were terrified, not of space or the wreckage or even death. They were terrified of the soldiers who were supposed to rescue them. She made her choice in a heartbeat. "Officer, I'm afraid I can't do that. These children are under my protection now. I'm declaring this shelter as a safe zone under Earth's civilian protection protocols. If you want them, you'll have to come through me." The radio exploded with angry voices, threats, demands, legal citations. Turned the volume down and looked at the Cubs. "Don't worry," she said quietly. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Stared at her. Then slowly the Cub's ears lifted. It made a sound, soft and grateful, moved closer, reached up and touched his helmet with one tiny paw. Looked out at the approaching ship. She had just picked a fight with a military vessel. She had no weapons, limited supplies, and no backup. But she had built a shelter from scrap metal in the middle of nowhere. She had kept 3 Cubs alive against impossible odds. She could do this too. She had to, because some things mattered more than credits or safety or even common sense, and protecting children was one of those things. Stood up and sealed her helmet. "Stay inside," she told the Cubs. "No matter what happens, stay inside the shelter. I'll handle this." She stepped out into space and began preparing her defense. The military ship hung in space like a predator watching its prey. It was 10 times the size of a salvage vessel, armed with weapons that could turn her ship into vapor in seconds. Floated between that ship and the shelter, just one human in a suit, armed with nothing but determination. Officer's voice crackled over the radio again. "Human, you are making a serious mistake. Those Cubs are wards of the state. You have no authority to keep them." Kept her voice steady. "These children are terrified of you. They're refugees from a war zone. Under the Refuge Protection Act of 2247, I have every right to provide them safe harbor until proper civilian authorities can assess their situation." The Refuge Protection Act applies to registered aid organizations, not random salvagers in debris fields. Actually, officer, if you check Section 12, Paragraph 4, any civilian vessel can declare itself a temporary safe zone in contested space when no other protective authority is present. Which, by the way, you weren't until 10 minutes ago. Had memorized those laws years ago. Her mother had insisted on it. Know your rights, she had said. In space, knowledge keeps you alive as much as oxygen does. There was a long pause. Could imagine the officer checking the regulations, finding out she was right. When spoke again, the anger was barely controlled. Legal technicalities will not protect you for long, human. We know those cubs have intelligence value. Their families were connected to the resistance movement. We need to question them. Blood ran cold. Intelligence value, question them. These were children, not enemy soldiers. They're 6 years old. They don't know anything about military operations. That is not your concern. Final warning. Surrender the cubs or we will take them by force. Looked back at the shelter. She could see the cubs through the small window she had installed. All three pressed against the glass, watching her. Small paw was flat against the transparent material, as if trying to reach her. She turned back to the military ship. Officer, I'm going to do something now. Watch carefully. Pushed herself to her supply pack floating nearby. She pulled out her ship's emergency blanket, bright orange and reflective. It was meant to be used as a signal in rescue situations. Now it would serve a different purpose. She found 2 pieces of scrap metal and welded them into a pole. Then she attached the blanket to it, creating a crude flag. The orange material caught the light from the distant star, glowing bright against the black of space. Planted the pole into the hull next to the shelter. The magnetic base locked on with a solid clunk. The flag rippled in the solar wind, visible for kilometers in every direction. Officer, I hereby claim this structure and the immediate surrounding space as sovereign territory. Any attempt to enter without permission will be considered an act of aggression. The radio was silent for a full minute, then laughed. It was not a nice sound. You cannot claim territory in a debris field. That is absurd. The Salvage Rights Convention of 2253 says I can. Any structure built from salvaged materials becomes the property of the builder. Any property can be declared sovereign territory if the builder is a citizen of a recognized nation. I'm a United States citizen. Earth is a recognized nation. This shelter is mine, and I'm declaring it protected space. This is insane. This is law. You want the cubs. File a proper refugee transfer request with the civilian authorities. Get a judge to review the case. Follow procedure. Until then, these children stay under my flag. Switched her radio to broadcast on all frequencies. Attention all vessels within range. This is Morgan, United States citizen, operating in neutral space. I have constructed a civilian shelter housing 3 refugee children. This shelter is claimed as sovereign territory under salvage rights and is under the protection of Earth law. Any military action against this structure will be considered an attack on Earth assets. I'm transmitting my registration codes now. She sent the codes out in all directions. Every ship with working sensors within light minutes would receive it. She was making this situation public. That was the only protection she had. If attacked her with witnesses watching, it would become an interstellar incident. Her radio immediately exploded with activity. Other voices cut in, some demanding explanations, others offering support, many just confused. Had just thrown a rock into the galaxy's pond and the ripples were spreading fast. A new voice joined the channel, older and calmer. This is Captain Gregory Hayes of the Earth Freighter. We received your broadcast. We're 3 hours out but coming to your position. Sit tight. Felt a wave of relief. Another human, another witness. Thank you, Captain Hayes, I'll be here. More ships chimed in. A medical vessel offered supplies. A trade ship promised to relay her message to civilian authorities. Even a few military vessels from other species acknowledged her claim, some with support, others with disapproval, but all recognizing the legal framework she was using. Officer's voice cut through the chatter, angry now. You are making an enemy of the protection force human. I'm protecting 3 children from people who want to use them as intelligence assets. If that makes us enemies, then we were always going to be enemies." Turned off her radio and went back to the shelter. The cubs rushed to her as soon as she entered, grabbed her leg and would not let go, looked at her with something like awe, made questioning sounds. "It's okay," said, even though they could not understand most of the words. She pointed at the flag outside. "That means you're safe. That means nobody can take you without a fight." She pulled out her remaining supplies and started working again. If decided to ignore the law and attack anyway, she needed defenses. Salvaged more hull plates and added them to the shelter's walls. She found a damaged shield generator in the wreckage and spent 2 hours rewiring it. It would not stop weapons fire, but it might deflect debris if things got violent. The cubs helped where they could, held tools, organized materials, mostly just stayed close to, offering moral support through constant purring and small touches. Hours passed, worked until her arms felt like rubber. She reinforced every weak point she could find. She set up proximity alarms. She even jury-rigged a basic communication jamming system from spare parts, just in case someone tried to call in coordinates for a strike. The shelter was not a fortress, but it was strong. It would take serious firepower to break through now, and that firepower would be witnessed by a dozen ships, all watching, all recording. Scanner showed more vessels arriving. The military ship was no longer alone. A second vessel appeared, this one flying different colors. Then a third. The war had followed her beacon. Both factions wanted the cubs now. She watched the ships positioning themselves around the debris field. They faced each other like dogs ready to fight. The shelter sat right in the middle. Captain Hayes's voice came through on a private channel. "This is Gregory. We're still 2 hours out. Are you seeing what I'm seeing?" "Yeah, 3 military vessels and counting." "You've started something big here. Both sides of their civil war are showing up. This could get ugly fast." "I know, but I can't hand these kids over to people who want to use them as pawns." There was a pause. "I understand. My ship's not armed, but we'll stand with you. Nobody shoots at kids on my watch." "Thank you, Gregory." "Don't thank me yet. This situation is about to get a whole lot more complicated." He was right. Scanner showed 2 more ships entering the area, not military this time. These were civilian vessels, smaller and older. As they got closer, his radio picked up their broadcasts. They were looking for their children. His heart jumped. She opened the channel. "This is Morgan. If you're looking for survivors from the transport ship Gentle Dawn, I have 3 cubs here, safe, unharmed." The response was immediate. A female voice, desperate and hopeful. "3 cubs. What are their names, please? What are their names?" Looked at the 3 children huddled in the shelter, and the voice on the other end broke into sobs. "My Bobbies, I'm their mother. Let me talk to them. Please let me talk to them." Held her communicator up too. The oldest cub took it with shaking paws. Then heard something that made her eyes sting with tears. Spoke rapidly in, the words tumbling out. On the other end, a mother cried and laughed and spoke words of love to her children. Grabbed the communicator next, pressing it close. The cub was crying now, making small, desperate sounds. On the other end, a father's voice joined the mother's. Both parents were alive. Both had been searching. Both had thought their children were dead. Only did not have family calling. The smallest cub sat quietly, watching the others reunite with their parents through radio waves. Picked up and held the little one close. Buried its face in suit and made sad sounds. Officer's voice cut through the emotional moment. "The cub's parents are here. Good. They can authorize the transfer to military custody for debriefing." The mother's voice turned sharp. "Absolutely not. My children are not going anywhere near your soldiers." "Ma'am, this is a matter of state security. This is a matter of my Bobbies being alive, and I will not let you take them away again. That human out there saved them when you were nowhere to be found. She gets to decide what happens next, not you. Smiled behind her helmet. She liked this mother already. The father spoke up too. We're coming to the shelter. Morgan, do we have your permission to dock and collect our children? Yes, sir, but slowly. The debris field is unstable. As the parent ship moved carefully toward them, Officer made one more threat. This is not over, human. You cannot hide behind civilians forever. Looked at the flag she had planted. It rippled in the solar wind, bright orange against the infinite black. I'm not hiding, officer. I'm standing right here, and I'll keep standing here as long as these children need protection. She turned to the cubs, and were bouncing with excitement, knowing their parents were minutes away. Sat in arms, quiet and alone. Made a promise to the smallest cub. You're not alone, I promise you that. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. Parents' ship docked with the shelter carefully, connecting airlocks with a gentle hiss, stood at the door with the cubs, and were vibrating with anticipation, held onto's hand, watching silently. The airlock opened. A woman came through first, moving fast. She dropped to her knees and opened her arms, and ran to her, nearly knocking her over. All three collapsed into a pile of fur and tears and desperate hugging. A male followed, equally emotional. He wrapped himself around his family, his tail curling around all of them protectively. They stayed like that for long minutes, just holding each other, crying and laughing and speaking rapid that translator could not keep up with. Finally, the mother looked up her eyes were wet, but her gaze was fierce. You saved my children. How can I ever repay this? Shook her head. You don't owe me anything. I just did what anyone should do. But not everyone would do it. The mother stood up, still holding close. You built them a shelter. You protected them from soldiers. You risked your life. That is not nothing. The father extended his hand to human style. She shook it. His grip was firm and warm. This is my mate. We are forever in your debt. Morgan, and honestly, your kids are amazing. They're brave and smart. You should be proud. Looked at her children, her expression soft. Then she noticed, still holding his hand. And this one, where are his parents? His expression fell. The ship's records showed his family was in Section 7. That section took a direct hit. There were no survivors. His ears drooped. She knelt down in front of and spoke gently responded quietly, ears flat. Pulled the smallest cub into a hug, rocking back and forth. When she released, there were fresh tears on her face. War, she said bitterly. This cursed war takes everything. Looked at what will happen to now. I don't know. There must be refugee services, orphanages, something. And exchanged a long look, then spoke carefully. Our colony was destroyed. We have no home to return to. We're refugees ourselves now. But if we had a place to go, we would take with us. No child should be alone. Felt warmth spread through her chest. That's kind of you. They talked for another hour. Learned that and had been searching the debris fields for days, hitting every wreck, following every lead. They had almost given up hope. Then's broadcast had reached them. You're famous now, you know, said. Your speech about protecting the cubs is all over the galactic networks. Half the species in this sector are debating whether you were brave or crazy. Probably both, admitted. Looked at the shelter, examining its work. You built this from scrap metal, in one day. I had motivation. You had heart, touched one of the welded seams. This is good work, strong. You protected them like they were your own cubs. Who had been quiet through all of this, suddenly tugged on suit. The little cub pointed at the had repaired, had been using it to draw pictures. Now it showed a crude drawing of, surrounded by 3 small figures, all under an orange flag. Felt her throat tighten. That's beautiful. Captain Gregory Hayes's voice interrupted on the radio. We've got a problem. More ships are arriving, and not all of them are friendly. Checked her scanner. Hayes was right. The debris field was filling up with vessels, military ships from both factions, civilian ships carrying news drones. even a few vessels from other species just watching the situation unfold. And in the middle of it all, her little shelter sat under its orange flag. Officer broadcast again on all frequencies. Attention all vessels. The Protection Force is asserting military jurisdiction over this sector. All civilian vessels must withdraw immediately. A different voice responded, equally authoritative. This is Commander of the People's Navy. We reject your authority. This is neutral space. Our civilians are present here. We will not withdraw. The two military forces were positioning themselves on opposite sides of the debris field. Shelter was right in the middle. This was exactly what she had feared. The war was about to restart, right here, with the cubs caught in the crossfire. Hayes spoke urgently. You need to get those children out of there now. If these two start shooting, that shelter won't protect them. Looked at and they understood the danger too. Come with us, said. Our ship is small, but we can fit everyone. Started to agree, then stopped. She looked at the scanner again. There were not just 3 cubs here anymore. There were dozens of civilian vessels in the area. Many had arrived after her broadcast, hopping for news of their own lost families. If the military forces started fighting, everyone would be at risk. No, said slowly. If we run, we'll order his ships to pursue. Commander will do the same. The fighting will follow us. We'll just be leading the war somewhere else. Then what do we do? Asked. Thought hard. She was a salvager, not a diplomat, but she had accidentally started something here. She had made this shelter into a symbol. Ships were watching because they wanted to see if one human could really stand up to military forces. They wanted to see if protecting children mattered more than politics and war. Maybe she could use that. Opened a broadcast to all ships. This is Morgan. Everyone listening, I want to say something. This shelter was built from garbage, scrap metal and spare parts. It took me 1 day to build. It's not impressive. It's not high-tech. It's just a box that keeps 3 kids warm and safe. She paused, letting that sink in. But that box has become something more. Right now, military forces from both sides of a civil war are pointing weapons at each other over this shelter. Why? Because they want to control 3 children. They want to use those kids as intelligence assets or propaganda tools or whatever serves their military goals. His voice hardened. I'm just a salvager. I don't have weapons. I don't have an army. All I have is the belief that some things matter more than territory or power or winning wars, and protecting children is one of those things. She looked at the cubs, all 4 of them now, watching her. There are civilians all around us, families looking for their lost loved ones, refugees trying to escape the fighting. They're here because they heard that someone was protecting children, and they hoped maybe that protection could extend to them too. His next words came from her gut. So here's what I propose. This shelter, this little box of scrap metal, becomes neutral ground, a safe zone. Any civilian who needs protection can come here. No military vessels, no weapons, no politics, just people helping people. We can call it the Cradle Protocol. The radio was silent for a long moment. Then Captain Hayes spoke up. This supports the Cradle Protocol. We pledge to defend this safe zone. Another voice joined in, a medical ship. The Healing Wing supports this proposal. More voices, a trade ship, a human mining vessel, a dozen civilian ships all declaring their support. Then something unexpected happened. Commander of the People's Navy spoke up. I have children of my own. I did not join the military to threaten cubs hiding in shelters. The People's Navy will respect the Cradle Protocol. Held her breath, would follow suit. The officer's response was cold. The Protection Force does not recognize illegal declarations of neutrality. Grabbed the radio from. This is Family Registration Number 47 Alpha 12. I am a voting citizen. I am standing here with my rescued children. If you fire on this shelter, you fire on me. And I promise you, every family in our faction will hear about it. Other civilian voices joined her. Parents who had found their children, refugees who had sought shelter. They all spoke up, all declaring support for shelter, all daring the military to attack civilians on camera with the whole galaxy watching. Officer's next transmission came through tight with anger. This is a disgrace. Military authority is being undermined by a salvager and a collection of civilians who don't understand the bigger picture. The bigger picture, shot back. Officer, I'm looking at 3 kids who almost died in your bigger picture. I'm looking at families torn apart by your bigger picture. Maybe the problem is that your picture is too big and you've forgotten to focus on what actually matters. More ships were arriving now, news vessels broadcasting everything live. The situation was spiraling beyond anyone's control. Simple act of building a shelter had become a galactic incident. A new voice cut through the chatter. It was calm, authoritative, and unmistakably human. This is Ambassador Foster of the Earth Diplomatic Corps. I'm en route to this location with a proper delegation. Morgan, you have the full backing of Earth in establishing this safe zone. All parties are ordered to hold position until we arrive and can mediate a proper resolution. Felt dizzy, an Earth ambassador. She had gotten the attention of her own government. This was way beyond anything she had imagined when she first heard those cubs whimpering in the wreckage. Tugged on her suit again, looked down. The smallest cub was making drawing motions. Handed over worked on it for a minute, then held it up. The drawing showed the shelter, the orange flag, and dozens of stick figures standing around it. At the center was a human figure with its arms spread wide, protecting everyone. Smiled behind her helmet. Is that how you see me, like a protector? Nodded and made a soft purring sound. Then the cub did something that broke's heart and filled it at the same time. Drew another picture, this one showing just 2 figures. One human, one small cub. They were holding hands. Understood, had chosen her. This little orphan who had lost everything wanted to be family. She picked up and held the cub close. I won't leave you alone, I promise. Watched this exchange with knowing eyes. You love that cub already. Nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then we will help however we can. Deserves a family. You deserve to be that family. Outside the shelter, ships continued to arrive. The standoff continued. But inside, surrounded by scrap metal and hope, 4 cubs and their protectors waited for whatever came next. Ambassador Foster arrived 6 hours later with an entire diplomatic flotilla. Her ship was sleek and official, bearing Earth's flag and the symbols of a dozen interstellar organizations. It docked at a safe distance from the debris field, and the ambassador came across in a shuttle with her team. Met her at the shelter. Foster was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She looked at the scrap metal structure, at the orange flag rippling in the solar wind, and at standing guard in her patched salvage suit. Morgan, Foster said, you've caused quite the situation here. I saved 3 children, ma'am. The situation kind of grew from there. Foster smiled slightly. Yes, I read the reports. Built a shelter in one day, declared its sovereign territory, started a galactic safe zone movement, and managed to get 2 military forces to back down without firing a shot. Not bad for a salvager. I just did what was right. That's exactly what makes this complicated. Foster gestured to her team. We need to sort this out legally. The cubs, the shelter, your claims, the military forces involved. It's a mess. Over the next hours, Foster and her team worked with everyone involved. They interviewed the cubs and representatives from both military forces. They examined the shelter, reviewed salvage laws, and consulted with legal experts across 3 systems. Sat with during most of it, watching the process unfold. The little cub stayed close, sometimes sleeping in her lap, sometimes drawing pictures on the. Finally, Foster called everyone together for her ruling. She stood in the middle of the debris field, surrounded by ships from a dozen species, all waiting to hear what would happen. After careful review, Foster began, I'm making the following determinations. First, Morgan's claim to this shelter under salvage rights is valid. She built it from materials she legally salvaged. The structure is hers. Officer started to protest, but Foster raised her hand. Second, her declaration of the shelter as a safe zone is also valid under Earth law and is now recognized by the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. Any civilian seeking refuge may request protection here. Commander nodded approval, looked furious but said nothing. Third, regarding the cubs, and are confirmed to be the children of and. They are free to leave with their parents immediately. The military forces have no claim on them. Hugged her children, relief washed over her face. Foster's expression grew more serious. Regarding, the situation is more complex, is an orphan with no living relatives that we can locate, under normal circumstances would become a ward of the state. Whimpered and pressed against, held the cub protectively. No, stays with me. Let me finish, Foster said gently. I said under normal circumstances. However, you filed paperwork requesting to adopt under Earth law. Normally this would be because you're not, but these are not normal circumstances. Foster pulled up a document on her. Has been in your care for 3 days. You've fed, sheltered, and protected this child at great personal risk. You've bonded with and with you. The psychological evaluation my team conducted shows that sees you as family. His heart pounded. What are you saying? I'm saying that in light of the extraordinary circumstances, and with the support of the civilian government who are grateful for your protection of their people, your adoption request is approved. Felt tears spring to her eyes. Really? Can stay with me. Is your daughter now Morgan? Legally, officially, and in every way that matters. Looked up at with those big eyes. The cub made a questioning sound, picked up and drew a simple picture. A human and a cub holding hands with a heart around them. Stared at the picture. Then the little cub looked at and made a trilling sound of pure joy, threw small arms around his neck and held on tight. Hugged her daughter back, crying behind her helmet. She had come to this debris field to salvage metal. Instead, she had salvaged something far more valuable. And came over. Congratulations, said warmly. You will be a good mother, we can tell. Thank you, and thank you for supporting the adoption. Smiled. You saved our children, this is the least we can do. Besides, chose you. Who are we to argue with that? The family prepared to leave, and said goodbye to, both hugging her tightly. They had become friends during their time in the shelter. They promised to stay in touch. Before they boarded their ship, turned back. The shelter, what will you do with it? Looked at the structure she had built from scrap metal. It had started as a desperate emergency measure. Now it was something more, a symbol, a promise. I'm going to leave it here, said. Other people might need it someday. Foster overheard this. Actually, I have a proposal about that. The galactic community has been watching this situation closely. Your actions have inspired a movement. Ships across this sector are volunteering to create similar safe zones, places where civilians can go during conflicts, where children can find shelter. Blinked, really. They're calling it the Cradle Protocol after your broadcast. If you're willing, we'd like to make this shelter the first official Cradle station. A permanent safe zone, staffed by volunteers, available to anyone who needs protection. Thought about it. Her little box of scrap metal becoming a real station, a place of hope in the darkness. I think that's a good idea, but who would run it? Captain Hayes spoke up. I'll volunteer. My ship's getting old anyway. I'd rather spend my last years helping people than hauling cargo. Other voices joined in. The medical ship volunteered to provide health care. The traders offered to bring supplies. Even some of the military personnel, inspired by what they had witnessed, offered to provide security on a volunteer basis. Foster smiled. It seems you've started something bigger than a shelter. You've started a movement. Over the next few days, the shelter was transformed. More materials arrived. Volunteers worked to expand it, adding proper life support, medical facilities, and living quarters. The orange flag was replaced with a permanent banner showing a cradle against a field of stars. Stayed to help with the initial construction, but her focus was mostly on. Her daughter needed time to adjust, to grieve, and to understand that she had a new home now. They spent hours together, taught basic human words, taught phrases, they drew pictures together, they shared meals. They slept side by side in the shelter, curled up against the side. Slowly began to heal. The fear faded from the cub's eyes. The sadness remained, but it was joined by hope and love and the security of knowing someone would always be there. On the fifth day, prepared to leave. The Cradle station was operational. Captain Hayes was settling into his new role. More refugees had already arrived, finding shelter and safety under the flag that had planted. Ambassador Foster came to see them off. "You're welcome to stay and work at the station, you know. You built it, it's yours." Shook her head. "I'm a salvager, that's what I do, but I'll come back and check on the place, make sure it's running right." "With a daughter now, how will that work?" Looked at who was excitedly exploring the Wayfinder. "I'll figure it out, I always do, and is tougher than she looks. She survived a ship explosion and 3 days in space. She can handle salvage runs with her mom." Foster handed a data chip. "This contains the official documents, adoption papers, citizenship records, everything needs. Also, there's a small stipend from Earth. Call it a thank you for representing humanity so well out here." "I don't need payment for doing the right thing." "It's not payment, it's recognition. You showed the galaxy what humans value. You stood alone against military forces to protect children. You built a safe zone from literal garbage. You started a movement that deserves recognition." Accepted the chip. "Then I'll use it to make sure has everything she needs. Good food, proper education, a real home someday." "That sounds perfect." They said their goodbyes, carried to the Wayfinder and settled the cub into a specially modified seat. Looked around the small ship with wide eyes, taking in her new home. Strapped in and started the engines. As they pulled away from the debris field, she looked back at the Cradle station. It glowed against the darkness, a beacon of hope where there had been only wreckage before. Her radio crackled. Captain Hayes's voice came through. "Before you go, I wanted to say something. You changed a lot of lives these past few days, mine included, thank you. Thank you for helping Gregory. Take care of the station." "I will, and you're welcome back anytime, you and both. This will always be your home if you need it." Smiled. "I appreciate that." As the Wayfinder left the debris field behind, pressed her small face against the window, watching the station shrink into the distance. Then the cub turned to and made a questioning sound. Had learned enough by now to understand. "Where are we going?" was asking. "Home," answered. "We're going to find a new home together." Considered this. Then the cub climbed into his lap and curled up, purring softly, wrapped one arm around her daughter and kept the other on the controls. She had come to that debris field alone, looking for scrap metal to sell. She left with a daughter, a purpose, and the knowledge that she had changed something in the galaxy. The Cradle protocol would spread. More safe zones would be established. More children would find protection. All because one human had refused to walk away from 3 crying cubs in the darkness. Set course for a peaceful sector where she had heard there were good schools and safe colonies. Places where a cub could grow up happy with a human mother. It would not be easy. People would stare. Questions would be asked. There would be challenges. But Morgan had built a shelter from scrap metal in the middle of a war zone. She had stood against military forces with nothing but determination and a flag. She had started a movement that would protect countless lives. Raising one stubborn, smart, loving cub would be easy by comparison. Fell asleep in her arms, safe and warm and loved, looked at her daughter and felt something she had not felt in years. Complete, whole, like she had finally found the missing piece of herself. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of possibilities. Engaged the faster-than-light drive, and the wayfinder jumped into the unknown. Behind them, the orange flag flew over a scrap metal shelter that had become a cradle. And beneath that flag, refugees found safety, children found hope, and the galaxy learned that sometimes the most important things are built not from high technology or military power, but from compassion, courage, and the simple determination to do what is right. Morgan had taught them that, and the galaxy would not forget.